Your strategy has to involve your mindset, and your strategy then involves the actions that you take to move you from where you are to where you want to be.
I'll start with what Visa isn't, right? Visa doesn't issue credit card. We don't issue credit. So Visa doesn't do that, which surprises a lot of people.
We'll use a phrase like, well, things changed, but things don't change. People change things. All the legislation that has been passed, somebody advocated for that. And so International Women's Day is to commemorate that history of women making change.
Several of the banks have started to migrate their existing debit card portfolio to chip and pin EMV technology. So the SMEs are going to benefit from a wide range of customers who previously did not have a credit card but only had a debit card.
Good morning and welcome to the live series Straight Off the Bat, a show that covers the need to revive, survive and adapt to new normal of COVID-19. Listen, excitement does not cover how I feel right now because I haven't seen you guys since last year. Yes, it's a dad joke, but this is real, okay? And if you haven't joined us before, we usually do this on Thursdays when we speak to individuals across multiple industries who will help you understand financial literacy and education. If you're joining us from LinkedIn, thank you. Don't forget to smash that follow button and continue seeing content that'll help you manage your money, especially now that we're all planning our resolutions. Let me just say your resolution should be to follow this page, because you need help with your money. This is the best place to do it. Today, we're discussing business opportunities and tips for family businesses in Trinidad and Tobago. And I'm excited to have our guest today, Mr. Sajjad Hamid. He holds a Bachelor of Science in Business Administration Marketing from the University of Florida and is currently a lecturer of entrepreneurship and family business in Trinidad and Tobago. He has published over 200 articles that advise small and medium-sized enterprises and family business owners. He's also a board member of the Chaguanas Chamber of Industry and Commerce, and he hopes to retire one day in his garden, which I'm going to have some tips on that because I don't possess a green thumb. So let's welcome first guest for 2022, Sajjad Hamid. Hi.
Right. Morning. How are you doing, Pauline? I'm glad that you all invited me because I wanted to speak on family business a long time now, and I'm very happy to be here. Did you hear me? I saw you just went off a little bit.
No. I hear you completely. We're good to go. Just for those out there, we are live, and just know that we may have a delay when we're having a discussion, but that's okay. That doesn't make the quality of the content any less. So let's get straight into it. When it comes to family business, I am positive every single person watching this knows somebody who either has a family business or works in a family business. And because it's something that's so common, we don't necessarily dissect it. So if you can just give us sort of a clear definition of what a family business is.
Right. Well, the feel of, if I have to answer you academically, right, I won't get too much into that, is that the feel of family business, they haven't really decided what is a family business, right? So I won't get into that, but what we know is that family businesses behave differently from their counterparts, which are non-family businesses. So for example, we know that they want to leave a legacy behind. We know that they are managed differently, and we know that they have a different entrepreneurial spirit. They have a different way of doing things. So we know how they influence a business is that they may own the business, and you don't have to be 100%, right? And they may express their ownership and also their influence on the business, maybe through the board of directors. So they may not be working in the business. They may be working in the business also, and they will influence the strategic direction of the business. And also a family business, a true family business, wants to continue to the next generations. So I would call that basically a working explanation of what a family business is.
Look at that. In
think I can-
2022, I'm already reaching to the common phrase, I was muted. Yes. Here we are. 2022, and we're still making the same mistakes. All right, cool. So that was a really good way for us to start and have this conversation, because a lot of us may not necessarily understand the economic impact of a family business. Why is it important for us to be able to have this discussion and elaborate on such a segment of economics within Trinidad and Tobago?
Pauline, I'm sorry. I think the internet dropped on me. I heard part of it, but I don't want to answer another question that you probably didn't ask. I don't know if you go back again.
Sure, no problem. You kind of paused there for a second because it was stuck. No worries. So what I was asking is, from an economic perspective, because a lot of us don't necessarily
Pauline, are you
think
hearing
about
me?
it. Yes, I am. Are you hearing me? Yes. I think we have a little delay, so you can just
Right.
wait to see when I finish the question, right? So what I'm asking
Start
is,
again.
from an economic perspective, we don't necessarily dissect and say, okay, this is a family business, this is how it impacts us. Why is it important to have that knowledge and education around family business, especially when it relates to Trinidad and Tobago, and what's the economic impact for us as citizens?
Well, I hope I got the question right, because I hear you asking about the economic impact. One of the things about family businesses is that they are actually more common than we think. It's actually in the blind spot of management and strategy, policy making too, because governments around the world do not have much policies that cover family businesses, right? And they create a lot of wealth. We know that because in Trinidad, for example, and around the world, some of the wealthiest people in Trinidad are people who own family businesses, and names like, let's say, Arthur Lockjack family. They own Associated Brands. The SM Jalil family, they own the Chubby Brands and Fruta. That's the Mohammed family. Then you have, let's say, the Bhagwan Singh's family. That's a family business. Actually, it is incorrect to say the 1%ers in Trinidad are a certain group of people, right? By ethnicity. I think that's correct. What we should be saying, the 1%ers or the ultra wealthy in Trinidad are the family business owners. So we see a lot of potential to create a lot of wealth, right? I hope I answered the question, Pauline.
Yes, you did. And I have so many other questions, because I fall guilty when you say, the 1%ers and ethnicity. I was like, why are you calling me out? I feel like this is definitely an educational session for me too. But what I want you to do, because we're going to go on a quick break, I need you to refresh because your audio and your visual aren't connecting. So we're going to do a quick break, and I want you to refresh your browser and sign back in, if that's... Yeah, you can do that?
Right.
Okay, we'll go on a quick break, and we'll
Okay,
be right back after
right,
this.
I'll do that.
And welcome back to Straight Off the Bat. I'm going to just get Sajjad right back in. I'm going to get straight into it. We experienced a little bit of technical difficulties, but we're here to discuss family business, especially when it comes to opportunities in Trinidad and Tobago. So in case you missed it, you mentioned something that's very common, where this idea of the 1%ers have a majority of the money that we all seek. But it's interesting to have that discussion from the family business perspective. And I want to find out, before we get into what you said earlier, what would be one of the main pros that we should be aware of when it comes to that business opportunity? Because a lot of times we may have an idea and we want to gung ho and say, okay, I'm going to do it by myself. But a lot of times we could be utilizing the people who are right next to us. So can you give us a pro that will be basically something that we could say, okay, yes, this is something I could work with? Because a lot of people are looking for entrepreneurship opportunities.
Right. I know you're breaking up a little bit, but I assume you're asking about the pros of the advantages of being in a family business. I think that's what you're asking, right, Pauline?
Yes.
Right. So well, you could be a solopreneur, a solo entrepreneur, and that is very common. We have technology to do that. I could operate in my office and I could do training and consulting and mentorship and all that, right? But let's say you wanted to involve your family, right, into the business. I know it's a little more complicated, and we could come to that. Some of the advantages of being in a family business is that you could have a short income, right, for the family. And that is very important. We point out the wealth aspect of it, right? We know family businesses create a lot of wealth. The big names I called are somebody very wealthy in Trinidad. I'm sure they don't bother about if they could pay the cable bill at the end of the day, right? They don't probably look at cash flow and that sort of thing like us, right? Also, if you work in a family business, you have the potential to work flexible hours. But don't get carried away with that, because my relatives, they have a roti business in South. And I remember growing up that when he started it, he and his wife worked. They used to get up 3 and 4 in the morning, right? Of course, that's at the beginning. But at the end, when I said at the end, when you mature the business, when business matures, you could have a situation where you could hire people, right? And of course, one of the big advantages of a family business is that if you want to leave something behind, property is good, a nice house is good, maybe a nice car, but a family business is something that could last for generations if you practice good succession. So, and I think that'll be important, because most of us will not be remembered 100 years from now, but like the Bermuda's family who owns the Cricks company, right? Cricks brand. I'm sure they will be around for another 100 years or so.
That is some very good insight. And I want to switch it over to, the cons, because as someone who has worked in a family business before in an administration role, I did not see a future in that business, because I realized by default I would never go where I need to go, because the family is being trained, and sometimes not even knowledge of the business. They buy just connection or last name, they got the job. So with my experience, can you add on a con to the family business?
Right. So if you work in a family business, you might say, well, there's just so far I could go, right? There's not a glass ceiling. We say glass ceiling for women. They can't go very far up the ladder because of the prejudices we have. So nepotism is common in our family business, right? So that is obvious. And of course, there are different types of family business. But the typical family business would give the plump positions to members of the family, right? But some of the cons, disadvantages of owning a family business is actually it's fairly complicated to manage. When you have, let's say, a company like Massey, all you have is you have the shareholders and you have the managers, and they have governance, so you separate the shareholding from the managers. But in a family business, you have a third dimension, which is called the family. So you have family, you have the shareholders, and then you have the management.
Okay, so we are experiencing a bit of a delay.
You
Oh,
have a
he's
lot of
back.
conflict.
So we had a bit of a delay on your end. So just go back before you say conflict. Hi. Okay, so we're gonna go
Okay.
on a short break
Right.
because we're having a little bit of
I
a
wish.
technical.
Mhm.
Are you there? I think we're
Yeah,
having
yeah,
a bit of
I'm
a
here.
technical
Go ahead. Go on your
issue
break.
with the
So you come back.
internet. Yeah. So I want you to finish your thought
Mhm.
before we go on the break. So you're talking about the conflict just before that you said that. You could go ahead.
Right. So because you have three systems in place that arises now, a normal business has the shareholders and you have the managers, and it's separated by the board and all that. But in a family business, when you introduce the family, you have three dimensions to manage, and that makes it ripe for conflict, right? And that is a serious problem, right? So that's the point I was making there.
Okay, so you mentioned some names there that we're very familiar with when it comes to being part of our culture. Like Cricks, for instance, that just sort of tandem with growing up on the tin itself. So there's clearly an element of success where that is concerned, and if you can share maybe one or two elements that would make a family business successful in Trinidad and Tobago. You
Right.
heard
So
the
Pauline,
question?
I'm not hearing you. I think you disappeared.
Okay, so we're gonna have to take a quick break.
Pauline, are you hearing me? No,
Yes,
I didn't hear the
yes.
question. I know you said you grew up with brand names like Cricks and that sort of thing.
Yeah, we're having a bit of an internet issue though, because I'm seeing you are in delay and then you're cutting off. So let's just go on a quick break and we're gonna put our ducks in a row. Let's try this one more time. So let's go on a quick break and we'll be right back. And we are back here with Sajjad Hamid, and we're here to talk about family business opportunities in Trinidad and Tobago. We're having a bit of a technical difficulty. This is live, guys, so sometimes these things happen. So we're gonna cut this short to 10:30, but we're gonna try and squeeze as much information as we can from him because I think this is an extremely lucrative opportunity to have a conversation about business opportunities when it comes to family business. So we discuss, the pros and cons of family business and the economic impact that it has in Trinidad and Tobago. If you missed that, don't worry. Once this is ended, you can go check out the replay, as well as we're looking at the elements of success because with names like Bermuda's, Arthur Lockjack, SM Jaleel Bagwan Singh, these are all family businesses that are showing us that it is an opportunity to be successful. So I want to get into some of the challenges that you may face when it comes to building that business or working within that business. So we want to welcome back in Sajjad and see if we can get him, and the internet is going to hold strong for this answer. Did you get me there?
Yeah, yes, I did. I changed even with Booster and all that. I'm still getting this problem. Welcome to Central Trinidad, I suppose. So you're asking me about. I just wanted to, before I answer that question, I just wanted to mention why is it they're successful in that family businesses, they tend to have a lower cost structure than non-family businesses. And the reason being is that when families own a business, it's like an extension of themselves. So you wouldn't waste toothpaste or let your kids waste toothpaste at home. So one of my students asked me, well, once I sorted the ketchup and I threw it in the bin. She was working at a hamburger joint. And the owner said, wait, hold on, pick that up again. You still got ketchup inside here, right? So they have a lower cost structure, but they also have something called a very low cost of capital. Now, a business to be profitable, it must have a low cost of capital, because the higher that is, the more you'll have you'll higher return you'll need to have. So how they have a low cost, a low cost of capital is that their investment horizon is longer than a non-family business. A typical business, let's say, would look at 5 years for a payback. A family business, they may look at maybe 5, 7, maybe 30 years, the next generation. Now, here's the big difference, is that family businesses, sometimes the founders invest money in the business for the next generation and don't want it back. And when they do that, the cost of capital becomes zero. So if your competitor is a non-family business and they have almost zero cost of capital, to win them is very difficult, right? So I thought I'd clear that up, right? So you're asking me the question about the success in the family business, right?
Actually, before you get into that, because I really enjoyed what you said there, and I didn't really think about it like that, because you're thinking, family business from an outside perspective, nepotism, but a cost of capital is quite lucrative in the success of business. So what happens if you have your family invested in the business, not monetary, but they're giving their labor at a low cost, but they are getting on your nerves? What is your suggestion with balancing that? Because there's this, well, you are a part of an organization, but you're also part of a family. What do you have any advice as to how to balance the two?
Yeah, well, I have the same problem too, because I work out of home, right? But what is very important is that family businesses, they do have conflict, right? But it is more constructive conflict. What they do is that they have they build harmony in their lives. So what they will do is things like this. They may have regular meetings. Now in Trinidad, our culture, from my understanding, is that we don't have family meetings. Forget about the business part. So in my family, for example, I try to have regular meetings, and it sometimes doesn't involve business. And we talk about what you did today and what I did today and what you achieved. So we hold each other accountable. Now I'm trying to pull my son into this business, and he seemed to know how to click this and thing on the internet and help him build my website and all kind of thing. I just know how he do it, and even though he is only 15 years old, right? So he's my IT manager. So it is important that you introduce them early into the business. Now, when my father had a business, during the vacation time, I would help out, right? And we know that family businesses, their kids in vacation, instead of only playing cricket and football, which is good, you get them involved in the business. So you plant a seed very early in their head and let them know how it has been run. Now, I wrote a case study on Rams Logistics, right? A very successful family business. And Sean, who is now the CEO, he took over from his father. He said that during the vacation time, when people are having his friends were having a good time playing cricket, he was in the family business. So what the family business is like a business school, not a normal business school like UB or Costat or UTT, is that they get hands-on education on how to run a business. I know I might be taking a swipe at the education system, but sometimes you get a better education in business in the school of hard knocks than if you're in a classroom. I mean, that's a general statement I'm making there.
I can relate, because people always ask me which college I went to, and I said the University of Life.
Right.
And it seems that your internet heard us and heard our cries
Right.
because
Right.
I can see you and hear you so well. Yay!
Keep your fingers crossed.
All right. This is gonna happen. All right. So I cut you off because you're having a conversation about a challenge. So let's go back into the challenge there because I think you kind of covered it when it comes to meetings. And I find that interesting that you said that because since I was yay high, you can't see like down there somewhere, I was the bossy one. So I was always making lists and saying, we need to talk about this. And I was like, you're not the boss of me. So yeah, I was exhibiting this behavior a long time. Can you elaborate on some of the challenges you will have when you don't have those discussions and you don't have those meetings? What can we expect businesses could encounter when those things don't happen?
Right. Well, we noticed that family businesses, they tend to have a succession problem. Now, in the United States, the figure is, and nobody has done research in Trinidad, right? In the United States, the failure rate is pretty high. I think the next generation, only 13% of businesses survive. So we know succession planning is very important in a family business. And we've seen when you have the death of a key person, the business ends up in trouble. Now, my son, and this is a conversation that my son asked me this weekend, last weekend. He says, Dad, because of the COVID, if I were to die or my wife die, his mother dies, what is the story? And that is a very good question he asked on a Sunday, right? So I went on to explain to him there are two issues that are very important. This is important in family business. When we talk succession planning, it comes down to two issues. One is how do you transfer the ownership? So just like in my family, when I die, let's say I die from COVID or whatever, um, my response to him is that I have insurance, which would cover the mortgage and all the bills, and he has education fund and his sister and all that, right? If my wife also dies at the same time, we also have the insurance. We may not have a lot of cash, obviously, right? But then there's another issue, and family business owners forget this one. Transferring the ownership is actually very easy. You go to an accountant, you take out life insurance, you could go to a lawyer, whatever. But the most challenging thing in succession planning is how do you transfer the management of the business? Because you could have a $10 million policy and you could pay off all the debts of the business. But how does the kids or siblings or whoever, the family own the business, how do they run the business? So when going back to my son, so when he asked me, I say we have life insurance and all that, but he asked what is going to happen with him because they can't live, they are minors. I don't think they can make great decisions yet. So I told him I already spoke to my cousin who doesn't have any kids, excuse me, and they are interested in them, right? Because they like them a lot. And then my sister also likes them also. So my point is, you could transfer the ownership and you could see a lawyer, accountant, whatever. But when you come to transferring the management of the business, you need to start working on very early. It doesn't happen in 1 month. It's like planting an orchard. Go back to my backyard gardening. If you plant a tree, it is not going to be a fruit tree like a citrus tree. It's going to take 3 and 4 years. So you got to start early with them. But let me just point out this, that succession planning, you may need some outside help because it involves, while an entrepreneur knows how to make money, he or she does not understand how to do a succession plan and craft that. So that's one of the big problems. There are others. I just go short. A strategic plan is very important in a family. It's a little bit complicated than a non-family business because when you're dealing with changes to the business, some family members may lose jobs or they may lose income or whatever. And a succession plan is important because if you were to go, the family must have a document saying how we're going to move forward, right? So that's two very important things, challenges that family business face: the absence of succession planning and doing strategic planning.
That's such an important conversation to have with your kids. Kudos, because even as you're talking, if you or your wife died, I was knocking on wood because I was like, no. I know it's important to have those discussions, and I think that's part of the problem as well. It's uncomfortable. And I know you also mentioned, the failure rate. There is a report that said 20% of small businesses fail in the first year and 30% fail within second year, and it goes up and up each time. So failure rate is very common, and a lot of the things that we are talking about today will help you reduce that failure rate, guys, if you're watching this. So when it comes to this succession planning, because I'm still gonna tap onto the conversation about us not wanting to meet, because that's such an important part of our culture, where we don't necessarily talk that often. We like to hold a drink or two. And succession planning is something that, you spoke about it when it comes to life insurance. But what about businesses? Like, what does that look like, and what does that conversation start when it comes to a family business and that legacy being left?
Right. So I want to go back to the simplest of governance structures. Now, people tend to think governance is only picking the right, the board of directors and all that, right? So I go back to the family meeting or the family business meeting. You should start with small things. Don't start with big things, right? So I remember reading about the Gucci family, who's famous into fashion goods, handbags and all that, Italian company. And the conversation at the table was this, is that the father or mother would ask the kids, do you want dessert, which is, well, it's ice cream, or do you want to take that money and we could set it aside to buy another sewing machine, right? They were in I think garments earlier on, or handbags, and they would put that on the table. So actually, the the kitchen table, the dining room table, sorry, becomes the kind of like a board of directors table. And of course, the education is taking place there. And they would say, well, dad or mom, let's set aside that ice cream money, and probably in 3 months' time, we could buy another sewing machine. Now, this is important in family business. They have a different mindset. They have, we talk about talent management in non-family business, but in family business, I like to call it the collective entrepreneurial intelligence, right? Which suggests that family business do well because they're entrepreneurial, and you've got to start having the meetings to discuss these big issues, right? So the Gucci family would do that, and that's how they build their business. They build it with sweat capital and giving up ice cream. Now, some research I've looked at called the marshmallow test, and this, I know it has nothing to do with family business, but it shows you how some families in Trinidad do well and some don't do well. They did some research and they found out that people who, when they were given, little kids, when they were given marshmallows, they say, if you want, you could eat a marshmallow now, or if you wait 15 minutes, you can have 2 marshmallows. And they tracked them over time, and they found out that the kids who didn't express instant gratification, more like postponed gratification, they did very well in life. So in family business, they understand sacrifice and putting off consumption. Now, you might say that there are some family businesses out there, when the second generation takes over, they sometimes squander things and they forget what built the business. And they would drive in their luxury cars and forget that the business needs money. So my point there is that if you want to deal with this conflict, you have to start the communication early, and get people, don't try to tackle big problems at the family meeting. Just try to put some structure in it and start early. And you should be able to minimize this conflict that takes place.
That's interesting to learn about the marshmallow test, because it's something that social media has been using with candy and in most recent times in TikTok. And to hear that it comes from a psychology background is just
New Zealand.
clear. Yes, clear understanding that nothing is new and we are just regurgitating information. And that's interesting, because when you see a lot of these influencers do it with their kids, they'll leave 2 candies and then walk out the room and come back. So I've seen that before, but to put it and connected the dots with family business is quite interesting. So I guess for you parents out there, you could go do that to your 2-year-old and see if they're going to be succession for your business. Don't take my advice, though. I'm not qualified. So what we're going to do is we're going to go on a quick break, and we are going to further the discussion around family business during this time of pandemic in Trinidad and Tobago. We'll be right back. And welcome back to Straight Off the Bat, a show that covers the need to revive and survive and adapt to new normal of COVID-19. If you're joining us from YouTube, smash that subscribe button because you don't want to miss this content. Trust me, I've combed the internet. You can't find it anywhere else. And today we're talking about business opportunities and tips for family businesses in Trinidad and Tobago. And really and truly, when it comes to money matters, it starts with the family, right? In our previous guest, my mind was blown when we think about our relationship with money and business. It's a learned behavior. It's not something we're born with. And today we are joined by Mr. Sajjad Hamid. He holds a Bachelor of Science in Business Administration Marketing from the University of Florida. He's currently a lecturer of entrepreneurship and family business. And we're here to have a discussion about the opportunities, because a lot of times in Trinidad and Tobago, we are working in a business, we know of a family business, so we're connected in some way. And shout out to Soda. I'm hoping that I'm pronouncing your name correctly. The content is beneficial, and that's what we're here for. So when it comes to family business, a lot of us know folks in Trinidad and Tobago who may be part of a business and frustrated. And we were talking about the pros and cons earlier. And I want to discuss this idea of succession, because it might become a little ticklish when the person who started the business, I'm sure everybody they're watching here know our parents is like, well, I had to, walk 2 miles to go to school. They'll tell you I had to walk 10 miles. And with that approach to parenting, that also comes with their approach to business. And although they may say, okay, yes, you're taking over my business, they don't necessarily leave the business. So what happens is you have assigned your son or daughter the role of manager, taking over the business, but yet you're showing up to the office every day with literally nothing to do. What is your advice there?
Right. That's an interesting question. Actually, in the United States, it's the same thing that happens. And a number of cases in Trinidad, I won't call any names, of course, that the founder of the business, because it is their baby, right? And I talked to a number of entrepreneurs, they say when they reach 60 or 65, they're getting out of here. I just spoke to one, and he was 60 last week, and he said he's going to get out. But unfortunately, his two children are doctors, right? So I don't know who is going to take over from the business. So there are different styles of succession. One of them is the monarch style, right? The monarch style is the person will not want to leave. They want to die with their boots on, or the crown on their heads or whatever, right? And they would always be there, and they'll weigh down the business. And I hate to say this, the successor will have to wait till they die. They just wouldn't leave. I had some friends who have an auto parts business, and they stayed right up to the end, husband and wife, and they were keeping the business from adopting IT systems and Peachtree and all that sort of thing, help it run better. So that's one style. There's another style we call it general. So you say, here this, I'm leaving kids, I'll take over. And they run off and they ride off into the sunset. And then one of the lawyers from the firm call them and say, hey, something, your children is not doing a good job and whatever. So they ride back in and they try to set things back, right? And so the succession doesn't take place. There are some that set a date, right? and they are called with a different name, and they would set a date and call the ambassador, and they would set a date and they would make sure the transition take place, right? And then there's one that would stay on, and I know of one in Trinidad and South, where the person would stay on, but as a chairman and doesn't get involved, and he leaves his chair and he groom them over the years, make sure they get a good education, and they would take over. And so that's like different styles. And I must say the bottom line is that most founders do not hand over to their kids, and sometimes they wait till they get ill, and they still, you have to wheel them in, and the employees get tired of them. They want to know why you're printing in color and why you're doing this, and little things that just keep out the business. Eventually, what happens, and we have some examples in Trinidad, I'm not going to call names, where they had to sell the business because it was just too much, and they sold the business because the kids couldn't get along also, and everybody ran off with their money, and the legacy died right there.
It's so interesting what you said earlier about, and it's morbid, yes, but it's so factual. This idea of the only way for the succession to happen is the person to die, and I actually experienced that because I worked in an organization where let's just say they had flour involved, and the person said to me, all right, I'm never leaving. You cut my skin and flour would come out, and his response was so indicative of the fact that, at the end of the day, this is part of my identity. So it's not something that they will ever see themselves separating themselves as long as they're inhaling and exhaling. So as somebody who may be in that situation where you see the growth, the potential for the business, you want to make that change, and every time you make 2 steps forward, there's 5 steps going backwards because that person keeps coming back, what advice would you give that person? Do they stick it out? Because there's also emotion involved, especially with family members.
You mean the advice for the founder or the kids who have to experience this?
Yeah, the kids or the person who's working, because we're also identifying people who work within the organization, right? So you have the kids as well as the employees who work in the organization. Right. What advice do you give to them?
Right. So you mentioned a very good point before I answer you, is that you're talking about the role of the non-family employees. Some of them are managers. Now, when the business gets pretty big, let's say from medium-sized to large, you just can't have enough family members in the business. So you have to bring in non-family members. And you got to manage them, because if you don't manage them and they leave, they take away the intelligence of the organization and go elsewhere. So you got to keep an eye on them. Now, this might be maybe a blanket solution to it, but what you need in family businesses, you need not only leadership, and leadership really will determine how this person approaches succession and all the other things that we need to change, because leadership is about change. Management is about dealing with complex issues, right? So I didn't coin this term, but I found it very interesting, something called entrepreneurial leadership. And that is what you need in a family business, because the vibrant ones are entrepreneurial. So not only need leadership, you need entrepreneurial leadership. And entrepreneurial leadership, you think about people like Steve Jobs, for instance, right? He would be considered not just a leader, entrepreneurial leader. And he had some qualities, for example, that you need to instill, that you get involved in the business. And that's where the owner would say, let me get my kids involved, because one of the functions of a leader is to create other leaders, obviously, right? Because you're not going to be around. And in entrepreneurial leadership, I don't know if you have today's Guardian, there's an article on entrepreneurial leadership. It was written by somebody with my name, and unfortunately, the person looks like me. So if you need more information about it, check the Business Guardian, right? It's only $4. I mean, you could put out $4 to read about what the quality is. I wrote it for you also. You can't complain. I mean, you can't say I'm not doing anything for you, all right? And so entrepreneurial leadership is where the leader of a family business continues the spirit of entrepreneurship and spreads that to his family members, and also spread that to the other employees and get them to think entrepreneurially too, because remember, people have ideas. Now, I know we call that talent management in the outside the family business, but in family business, I just say it again, they call it entrepreneurial intelligence. And somebody got to manage this collective intelligence, right? And it's like Star Trek. I like Star Trek a lot. And Star Trek has the Borg. The Borg is a race that they have, everybody's linked together. So they are actually very, very powerful, right? So I hope I answered that question.
Hilarious. For those who may not have gotten it, it is him who's writing the article. And for those who may not want to have the ink on their hands, this is also something you could buy online for subscription, because I know, like your son, Sajjad, we are all online, right?
Right. Yeah, well, you could buy it, you could get it online. I have it online, actually. I don't get a newspaper again. So I deliver newspaper for a living. Okay, good.
And what I find, because you mentioned some names earlier that I'm gonna bring back to the fore, which is like SM Jalil and folks like Arthur Lockjack, which are two different industries that would experience a shift in the environment, meaning you have this shift in healthy lifestyles, so soft drinks aren't as popular. You have a shift in learning, because obviously with pandemic, the idea of driving to school and sitting down with a class full of people is just not happening. So when it comes to the shift of your market and the behavior of your consumers, what is an element that you can share that is effective to managing through, yes, we're in a pandemic, but also that shift in your customers' behavior?
Right. So that's a big headache for the soft drink industry and the snack food industry, because both SM Jalil and Arthur Lockjack is in the food business, right? Soft drinks and snacks and all that. So I'm sure if you look at they are slowly changing. But you could see SM Jalil, they have juices now. Well, I don't know how healthy juices are. I mean, I don't drink juices. And you can see that they are changing. Now, this must be a debate for the family, because the older generation built the business on, let's call it sin food. I don't know if that's the right word, right? I hope they don't sue me, because I don't have any money, right? And the next generation is they're probably talking and say, here, we need to transition. We need to have healthy snacks and healthy drinks. But family business that survive 100 years, and there are a couple of family businesses that survive 100 years, it shows that they are able to adapt to environmental change. And what they do is that they recognize that the assets that are not performing is to get rid of them, whether it be tangible or intangible assets, and acquire new assets, right? So you will see that happen. If you notice, Bermudas have introduced the whole grain cricks and the whole wheat and whatever they have. And you could see that they are changing their product line. I believe Bermuda's own parts of the Kiss Baking Company, if I'm not mistaken, and you can see they're introducing a lot more healthy products. So true entrepreneurial companies will know to change with the market, right? They certainly know how to do that.
Yeah, when the multigrain came in, I was like, yep, I can get on board on this. It's something that I can work on. And the whole wheat as well. So we're going to go on a quick break. But before we do, I want to leave the question with Sajjad for him to ponder on so he can answer. When it comes to business opportunities for potential business owners to undertake in 2022, we're going to look at what can we be planning for, especially now with people, making their resolutions for 2022 and looking to explore the idea of having low capital cost, free labor, as you may, is investment into your business and building that family business. We want to really squeeze as much information as we can so we can add to your vision board of whatever that looks like in 2022. So we'll be right back. And welcome back to Straight Off Your Bat. I am your host, Pauline Joseph, and thank you so much for joining us today. If this is the first time you're joining us, this is a show that covers the need to revive, survive, and adapt to a new normal of COVID-19. If you're joining us on Facebook, smash that follow button or like or both. It's really up to you. Don't worry, I'll wait. Give you a second. Finish? Okay, great. Don't forget to subscribe because you're not going to get this content anywhere because we're very specific to the Trinidad and Tobago audience. Today, we're here to discuss business opportunities and tips for family businesses within Trinidad and Tobago. And we're here with Sajjad Hamid, and he is going to give us some insight on what it means to start a business, because we're going to go all the way back. You know, you may have an idea for 2022 and you want to pursue a business. If you have looked at previous episodes, if it's a food truck, stop. Stop. Okay, just stop. That's a personal opinion. These reviews do not reflect those of Bankers Association of Trinidad and Tobago. I have a pet peeve on that. But anyways, we'll put out a link below. When it comes to an opportunity for building a business, if you missed it, Sajjad covered the fact that the low capital cost when you include your family is beneficial to a business. So let's look at opportunities for 2022. We're in a pandemic. Unfortunately, a lot of us are doing things that we would not have done before. Like, for instance, last year, Amazon was within the top 10 of sites visited in Trinidad and Tobago. Sorry, not last year, in 2020. In 2021, it is in the top 5 websites, which means we are purchasing a lot of stuff online. May not be necessarily good for the environment, but this is the type of change of behavior that's happening. When it comes to potential opportunities, Sajjad, can you give us some insight building your family business from scratch?
Well, I don't want to say, well, this is an opportunity, but I like to give people a framework or perspective that they could pursue and look for opportunities. So, for example, opportunities could come to you by accident. An example would be Bertie's pepper sauce, right? So those who like pepper sauce, you probably like Bertie's pepper sauce. And they started in business, husband and wife. Well, they had no intention of starting a business. They had a guy who was doing, let's call him a landscaper or whatever. And they found out from him that he didn't have a refrigerator, right? So they were appalled by that. So they said, you know what, they do, make some pepper sauce and sell it. And when they get some money, they will buy him a refrigerator, which they did. So they decided that's it. Then people started to ask for more pepper sauce. And then they decide, well, maybe this is an opportunity. So they kind of call them the accidental entrepreneur, husband and wife. And then they started to make pepper sauce, and then they had to store it in the house. Well, the typical case is that entrepreneurs start their business in their homes, right? Now, don't underestimate your homes. I know some of you may have mortgages on your house, like me, but don't try to pay the mortgage. Let the house pay the mortgage, right? So Bertie started this, and now they're not out of home. I think they have a big factory or somewhere, right? Because I see a lot of pepper sauce out there. But here's an opportunity that you could use. Now, your kids who are Generation Z, they may be less than 25 years old. They probably will not work for anybody because they can't take on this thing sitting behind a chair and dealing with a bad boss and all kind of thing, right? They're not into that. So talk to them. We have the technology now, and I have probably a workshop coming called the Knowledge Solopreneur, where people have skills right now. And there are a lot of people out there who have degrees and experience and expertise. And you could start a business out of your home, right? I have a light, I have a webcam, and I have a headset. Well, I had this back up somewhere. And I could conduct training courses out of home. So I'm not saying you could only train it. You could do anything in the service business. Maybe you could do mentorship, maybe you could do coaching, maybe you could do advising or whatever. And maybe you could start with the kids, because I'm trying to bring my son in because he seemed to know technology better than me. Now, he can't develop the content because he's only 15 years old. So if you're looking for opportunity, maybe you could bring them in and use digital technology, because what happened now, and it's not hard to use. I mean, just play around, and eventually you'll figure it out or take a course. I think the world of work is going to change where people can have a one-person business. I know we're talking family business. You can start as a one-person business and then start slowly bringing your family members into that business. So I think that is one thing you should look at. Look at the skills that you have. You have expertise, which could be improved, of course, and figure out how can I monetize that, right? You don't need to put up a big building. You don't need to enjoy cubicle life. I mean, who does enjoy cubicle life? Put a picture there, the characters there. I mean, I don't know, right?
That is such an interesting story about Brady's, because when you think about it, you know, pepper sauce is a dime a dozen, actually even more now. So, but now when I'm traveling, my friends ask me to bring the Bertie sauce, you know, so that is such an well, inspirational as well. And you know, you mentioned your son, and some folks might be thinking, well, that's child labor. What are your thoughts on that?
But no, I don't think it's child labor, because remember, you have to give them an education, right? And we tend to think of education as you must have, you know, take your CSEC and your CAPE and whatever. But I think our business education is very important. I mean, I wish I was a doctor. I would have given him a different education, right? And I think that we don't have the education system doesn't really teach you all it's supposed to teach about managing money. Like for instance, my son will come to me, you want to buy a laptop, right? You have a tablet, you want a laptop. I said, if you help me in the business in the second quarter, we make enough money, you could get your laptop, right? No, I don't think that is. I think my father had me doing little odds and ends, and I learned about business. I remember once my father did this to me, and you might look back and say he was overdoing it. He gave me a Land Rover, but as the old ones, not the expensive one. No. He had a piece of land. He said, here this, go in the land and reap the oranges. He had some workers, and you sell to my customers, and he's not giving me no money. I said, oh my goodness. You know, I said, but I need some money. He said, well, you could find your own customers, right? I said, oh my goodness, I don't want to do that. So I would fill the Land Rover up, and I would look for customers all around. In 1 week, I sold, if you correct for inflation, about $8,000. Now the product is free. And then he found I was doing too well, because I found out that I had a skill in marketing. So then he said, you have to go and study after about a year doing that, which I didn't want to do. And I ended up, because of that seed planted in my head, selling oranges on the side of the highway, right? Which is dangerous, I suppose, you know. I ended up studying marketing. And that lesson is still with me, is that you got to know how to sell. That's an important trait. So I don't think it's child labor, but of course you don't want to take your kids out of school. You need to leave them in school. And my son asked me this question, Dad, I think I need to drop out of school. Well, my wife is a teacher, so that she just blew up when she heard that, right? So I tell him, if you can't read and write, and if you can't do this and you can't do that, how are you going to do it? You know, you have to stay in school and get an education. So I think you need to balance it, and I think I don't think it's child labor. I think it's more like internship.
Great. I think that is awesome advice that we're going to end off this session with. Thank you so much to Sajjad Hamid for joining us today and sharing insight into family business opportunities in Trinidad and Tobago. And you may want to join us next week, Thursday. We go live again, and sign up to be notified for the next live show via the links in the comments below. Check it out. As always, be sure to like us if you're on LinkedIn, and I will see you then. Have a good one, guys. Bye.
Okay, bye-bye.